Okay, listen, first of all, for anyone, as I said, I'm Liam Hannaway, Minister. Me and you crossed swords on previous occasions, so I need to introduce you to me. But I suppose I'm chairing the meeting today as a member of Children in Northern Ireland. And again, this is our second webinar looking at holiday hunger. And the particular focus of this is the holiday hunger. We're particularly delighted, Minister, to have your commitment to this. We understand that Thursday is a very busy day. Every day is a busy day, but a particularly busy day. And we really do appreciate your commitment and your involvement this morning and to say a few words to us. I suppose by way of introduction, holiday hunger is nothing new to children in Northern Ireland. They've been working on the holiday hunger projects way back since 2016. And the whole idea is not, I know that COVID has brought a particular focus on school meals, when schools are closed, and in particular free school meals when schools are closed. But holiday hunger is a much broader issue. It's about, first of all, about food for children, healthy food for children, but also social isolation, educational attainment. We all know that when children are off on their holidays, they lose because of holiday hunger or poor eating habits, that they actually, when they come back to school, the level of engagement isn't as strong, their educational attainment drops off. We also know there's social isolation. We also know that, plus the other thing in terms of the well-being and learning about well-being is critically important. And the whole holiday hunger project is about bringing all them different elements about social isolation, boredom, food poverty, all together and working together. And it's about also working in partnership, because we've believed in Children in Northern Ireland that we need to work with the local community to actually do this. It's not about imposing it on people, but it's working on it. And then also to the great altruistic organisations like Almac and Finna Brogue, who now have come on board to support the project. So it's very much about a partnership. And I suppose, like all these things, you start doing them in 2016, but it's important to start to evaluate how that's going to work. And we're delighted to have Greta Defeter here from Northumbria University to actually talk about the evaluation of holiday hunger. So enough from me, Minister. I'll pass over to yourself to say a few opening remarks.
Thank you, Liam. It's good to see you, my old friend. I suppose maybe start by two apologies. First of all, we did have a bit of technical difficulties, which has ended up, I think, with having to use a different iPad in relation to this. But also, I suppose, unfortunately, given the pressures that's going to be there in terms of the day with the executive meeting relatively shortly and the preparation work for it. After I've spoken, unfortunately, I'm going to have to leave you, but we have officials with us. So thank you, Liam, and your colleagues at Children in Northern Ireland for the kind invitation to speak at the launch of the report on holiday hunger. The report, I suppose, highlights the efforts of Children in Northern Ireland and other groups I know who are represented here today in providing much needed support to vulnerable children during holiday times. And the feedback mentioned in the report shows the value of programmes such as these. I'm particularly impressed with the feedback from the children on the learning of new skills such as leadership, first aid, cooking and baking. I note that the children were able to achieve certificates and accreditations, and I think they can rightly feel proud of their accomplishments. And I think these programmes, not only as you indicated, Liam, it's a much wider issue, not simply address holiday hunger, but provided, I think, a safe space for children to make new friends and enjoy themselves over the holidays. And we know sometimes that can be a difficult period for many children. This is really important, I think, to give children a sense of well-being and belonging. Now, for some children, school holidays are a time of stress and impoverishment. This is especially the case from children from some low-income families, where school holidays can bring uncertainty, greater financial pressures for the family, food insecurity, isolation, and poor health. I know everyone here will agree that holiday hunger is a real and deeply problematical issue within our society. And the link between holiday hunger and learning loss, I think, is also well documented. The holiday food payments that we've now worked on only addresses the most hunger during the holidays, and as your evaluation shows, some form of learning and social interaction is also required during those periods to ensure that children from more vulnerable families are supported and do not fall behind. Over the school holidays, children from poor backgrounds can fall behind their peers in educational terms. This is because they miss out on many of the enrichment activities enjoyed by their more affluent peers, on opportunities to take part in sporting, cultural, and learning activities, but also because they go hungry and their health and well-being suffers. It's great to see programs like these which aim to plug that gap and bring that learning element to children as well as simply providing food. This gives children a sense of achievement and confidence, and I'm sure it would encourage them to engage more in the classroom when they return. Sadly, food poverty is an issue which arises every year during school holidays. It's not just the result of COVID-19, but the pandemic is likely to have made things worse. It's an issue that myself and my executive colleagues are working hard to address. So I was very pleased to announce at the launch of the school holiday food grants, which will at least give us a level of certainty and provide payments for children who qualify for free school meals during school holidays up to Easter of 2022. The aim must be obviously to use that time as well to work to try to find longer term solutions. And obviously, while this is a very positive move, I'm also aware that it's not a panacea. I've been liaising with the outgoing Minister, Minister McCullen, and will continue to work with Minister Hargey of the Department for Communities to find ways in which we contribute to reducing or eliminating child poverty. The Department for Communities agreed to take the lead on food poverty as part of its work on the anti-poverty strategy, but I'm mindful that this is not an issue which can be resolved by one department alone. It will require all of us to work together to find the best way forward. Work on the food poverty specifically will begin in January, and my department will be involved in that work. The Department of Education will seek to ensure that actions relating to food poverty include free school meals and holiday hunger, and activity programs that can be developed for holiday periods. Initiatives such as the Holiday Hunger Programme offer a real opportunity for children who could otherwise go hungry during the summer holidays, and it makes a genuine difference in children's lives. The efforts of everyone involved are to be applauded, and I know that parents and children alike appreciate this greatly. I'm pleased to launch this evaluation today, and I wish you well in your discussions. In particular, this report will be a valuable resource in government's work on food poverty, and for my department's work in looking at holiday activities to address learning loss. So thank you for all your hard work, and I wish you every success, both for today and in your future ventures.
Thank you very much, Minister. I really appreciate that and really appreciate your commitment to the project. I suppose we're going to move on now. I don't know how long you can stay with us, Minister, but
I'll have to, unfortunately, I think Liam will have to go at this stage, so I wish you, but there will be officials from the department will be here sort of throughout the meeting.
That's great. And again, really thank your commitment and the best of luck with your decisions today.
Okay.
Thank you. So I suppose, given the number of people, and we've got an hour slot for the webinar here today, we won't be able to take questions, but the chat function is available on the Zoom. So Pauline and Ellen will be trying to address some of the points that come through on the chat function. So if something jumps up to you that you want to ask a question about, just type it onto the chat function, and Pauline and Ellen hopefully will be able to address it. Second thing is that we're also going to put a link on the webinar to the evaluation report, so you'll be able to get copies of the evaluation report. Which brings me neatly on to then our next speaker, who's Greta Defeter. I hope I've got that the surname correct here, Greta. And Greta is a professor from Northumbria University who has led the evaluation of the Food Hunger Project that children in Northern Ireland and their partners have been engaged in since 2016. So without further ado, I'll ask Greta to address us. Greta.
Well, I think between the Minister and Liam, you've covered just about everything I was going to say, so I can make it really quick, hopefully. First of all, thanks to Pauline and Ellen from Children in Northern Ireland for inviting us to evaluate their project in Northern Ireland. And most sincere thanks to Jackie Shinwell, who was instrumental in collecting the data and did all the hard work, and I'm just taking all the glory of presenting the slides, so let's put that up front. Okay, because of technical difficulties, i.e. my inaptitude to use Zoom or Teams or anything, I'm going to be like Chris Whitty and say next slide. So forgive me, everybody, if I just say next every now and then. It's not part of the talk, but hopefully the other person on the end controlling the slides will pick it up. So next slide. Okay. So our main objectives in this evaluation were to explore the development implementation of the program and the benefits, so the outcomes of the program on attendees, parents and the community, to assess the implementation to see whether the program met its objectives and aims, and to investigate the effect of holiday club attendance on children's dietary intake. I'll be moving really quickly between the slides, but as the full report has been put online, I hope you'll bear with me in this. Okay, next slide, please. Thank you. In terms of our evaluations, it's really important to draw a conclusion about what works. So we used what we call a process evaluation to capture whether the program was developed and implemented in the way intended, also to look at the mechanisms of change. And by that, I mean, what are the things that are driving the change in the kind of process to drive to the outcomes? The outcome box is specifically blank because I will be picking that up on my final slide. So when we look at this, it's really important for all holiday programs, whether they're in England or Northern Ireland or Scotland or Wales, to look at the context, to look at both the national and local context in which these programs operate. So actually engaging communities in the co-development of the project is very important. And it's something that children in Northern Ireland did really well. Next slide, please. So just to give you a brief summary of the context, and you on the call will know far more information on this than I will. But recent data has shown that 1 in 4 children in Northern Ireland are living in relative poverty. And 97,000 children receive free school meals. And it's important to remember there that the actual qualification, the threshold for free school meals is much higher in Northern Ireland than it is in England, for anyone tuning in from England. Next slide, please. So as part of the context, we used a working paper that we'd worked with the all-party parliamentary group on school food. And although we had surveyed the whole of the UK, this was specifically looking at holiday club provision in Northern Ireland. The paper covers years 2016-17 and the academic year 17 to 18, so it's 2 surveys. We found that 88 organisations were actually delivering holiday provision in some form in Northern Ireland, and there was normally a charge between about £2.50 to £20 per child per session. And sessions, we're talking either a morning or an afternoon session. Nearly all of the activities and the programs offered a range of food, enrichment and cultural and educational activities. Although 65% of these programs were picked up by the voluntary segment. However, the provision, just like it was in England, is fragmented and piecemeal. Provision is concentrated around Belfast, and the food provision in terms of sourcing food, preparation of food, and actually delivery of food is highly variable. Next slide, please. So in the current evaluation, it's actually got only 5 studies in here, but I'm only going to be talking about 3 today. The first study I'm going to talk about is the qualitative investigation of the views of the key stakeholders. Parents and children are included in that in holiday provision. I'm then going to refer briefly to a holiday club leader survey. And finally, I'm going to concentrate a little bit on nutritional intake of children. Next slide, please. So this is just a summary of the participants. And I think it's important to include this because one of the things that is really interesting about this study is in study 1 that you'll see at the top there of the table, we actually interviewed 65 children. And these weren't just young people. These were actually younger children. And some were as young as the age of 7. So we've developed techniques and methods of actually capturing data from very young children in this regard. And it's important when we're looking at the study 1 that you actually include all of the views of the stakeholders, both in parents, holiday club staff, as well as the senior stakeholders and policymakers. In study 2, the number is small because we actually evaluated 4 clubs, 4 programs that were operating. And in study 3, the number is large for a nutritional study of that type. Next slide, please. I'm not going to ask everybody to read all the quotes because they're in the paper, so I'm just going to summarize what's on the slide here. So in terms of the qualitative study, we actually conducted it under a theory of change, or a logic model that we've produced, and we also looked at it in terms of a socio-ecological approach. The data from all participants was transcribed, and thematic analysis was conducted to identify themes and sub-themes. And what I think is interesting on this slide is when you look at the need for a holiday program, the views of the children and the parents are strikingly similar. And there's clear evidence throughout our study around the need of something to be provided for children, especially those living in disadvantaged areas during the long holiday period. Next slide, please. So this provides you a summary of what we found in our qualitative study, study 1. So you can see some of the challenges here for parents is focused around childcare, and childcare is often forgotten because the name holiday hunger, which I don't particularly like, keeps focusing on food and food insecurity, but actually when we look at the complete family and the child, it's far more than that. So availability and cost of childcare, especially for those on universal credit, the fact that free school meals, as the minister has already said, are not available, and the increase in expenditure across the holiday period. For children, they focused on their loneliness that they felt, inactivity, both culturally and physically, boredom, holiday hunger, and learning loss. And the consequences of this are quite dramatic. So parents are unable to work due to the high cost of childcare relative to their household income, increase in food insecurity, increase in poor mental well-being, both in parents and in children, increases in children's BMI, and also educational attainment loss, which may well widen the educational attainment gap between those more affluent children and those children living in areas of deprivation. Next slide, please. I've included this quote because I think this really sums up Children in Northern Ireland's approach. It isn't just a child feeding program. It wasn't just about feeding the children. It was providing a rich range of resources and activities to children. And some of the young people actually had qualifications coming out of this. So the program was looking at how to inspire, how to improve the outcomes all round in terms of education, cultural integration into communities. So far more than just food. Next slide, please. Of course, it would be lovely to say that it didn't encounter any barriers in terms of implementation or delivery, but that wouldn't be true. One of the biggest things that was identified in our evaluation was there was a real feeling of good intentions and wanting to do real kind of good, if you like, in the communities and to those children attending. But clubs either didn't have adequate, I'll get to speak in a minute, facilities on site. So, for example, the kitchen in one of the clubs that we looked at was the size of a domestic kitchen, but feeding lots and lots of children every day. The cost of insurance policies to enable clubs to provide hot meals was also another barrier. Next slide, please. And perhaps the biggest barrier was funding. If we're really going to be serious about making a difference at scale, we need to ensure that these programs are supported both by policy but also by adequate funding. Next slide, please. Just as in the case of facilities and funding, staffing was also an issue. And I think it's important to remember here, if you look at the quote on the right-hand bottom corner, I think it summarizes some of the issues. We're asking volunteers with really good intentions to actually upscale cooking from maybe the normal cooking from a family of 4 to cooking for sometimes loads and loads of children. So this is a real problem. So we need to think about how we can upskill volunteers and actually invest in our voluntary community as well. Next slide, please. Sourcing and provision of food is the perennial problem. So when you have lack of funding and lack of adequate facilities to prepare food, and you have problems then in sourcing and actually cooking the food, it's hardly surprising that the food offer at clubs is highly variable. This is nothing unusual. This is exactly following the same pattern that I've seen for a number of years in England, okay? And so what we need to think about here is how we source food for these clubs. We need to consider issues such as, should we be using surplus food? How can that actually be implemented in a sustainable way into the actual programs themselves? Next slide, please. The benefits of attending holiday program, I'll just summarize here quickly what some of these quotes are referring to. So for children, it wasn't just about the food. It was about improving confidence within a safe environment and an environment where they knew they weren't going to be bullied. Children learnt new skills, increased their engagement in physical activity, and then they had improved self-efficacy. For parents, it helped increase their disposable household income. And for communities, it provided a source of community cohesion and resilience. And that was across different religions and different cultures. Next slide, please. So quickly moving on to study 2. And again, the full details are available in the evaluation report that we've commenced and published now for children in Northern Ireland. We asked clubs to rank the top 5 priorities. So rather than just looking at the strategic operational level, we went down to the club leader to see how those values from children in Northern Ireland had been integrated and were actually accommodated and adopted at the club level. And the similarity is very strong. We found that the top priorities for clubs were to feed children, provide access to healthy food, to make clubs fun. And I think this is important. Clubs and holiday provision isn't another form of schooling. I'm not saying schooling isn't fun, but children don't want that. They want to have actually education and cultural activities delivered in a fun and innovative way. Clubs were looking at increasing physical activity and to reduce social isolation, as well as gaining skills. In terms of operational characteristics, there was huge variability in the food provision, recruitment of attendees, how voluntary staff were recruited to the program, the skills of voluntary staff, etc., etc. Next slide, please. Okay, I'm going to spend just a few minutes focusing on this. I know Liam's probably emailing me, telling me to get off and stop, but I'm going to keep going for a few seconds. In study 3, this was a much more controlled study, and we looked at the effect of holiday club attendance on children's dietary intake. So in this study, children self-reported what they consumed, and I'll just run you through how we did this. Firstly, it's important to note that we developed methods for collecting data, so dietary intake data from very young children, and we used some standardized measures to do this. In looking at the design, don't be panicked about a mixed factorial design. Basically, what that means is that we tested children on a day that they attended holiday club and on a day they didn't attend holiday club. So children act as their own controls, and that's important because everybody eats different things. So we wanted to test in terms of the individual preference. Was there a difference between a day they attended and a day they didn't attend? And we looked at collecting data for this study across 3 clubs. We also measured core and non-core food. So this is a way of categorizing the food intake into core and non-core food. It's used quite frequently in Australia. And to give you an example, core foods are things such as vegetables, fruits, carbohydrates, dairies, and non-core foods are ultra-processed foods, sugar-sweetened beverages, pastry products, etc. And we tested 48 children. So this was a good sample size for a study of this type. Next slide, please. So across the x-axis on this graph, you can see attendance. So non-holiday club attendance that is first, followed by the green bar, which is our day they attended holiday club. And on the y-axis is the number of core foods. So if you like to think of the core foods as being a proxy for healthy foods in this case. Now, it may surprise some of you that on a non-attendance day, children actually consumed more healthy foods than on a holiday club attendance day. Didn't really surprise me, to be honest. This is a typical kind of finding that we've found across numerous studies, and I'll explain why towards the end of this study. Next slide, please. Importantly, as well as looking at core foods, it's important to look at the non-core foods, so the proxy for the unhealthy foods that are consumed. And you can see here that on a day that children attended Holiday Club, the bar on the right-hand side of the graph, compared to the blue column on the left, children actually, when they attended Holiday Club, ate fewer non-healthy foods than on days that they didn't attend. Next slide, please. We broke this down further, both at club and also in total, so cumulative across the clubs. And what you can see here is whether you're looking at fruit and vegetable consumption, there's no difference at all between whether children attended a club or whether they didn't attend the club. So there's no difference. And you may say, well, okay, Greta, there's no difference. But let me just draw your attention to something I think that's really startling and suggests that actually there's a bigger need here. If you look at the total mean, it's on table 2 at the top. If you look at the total mean on a day not attending the Holiday Club, 0.5 is half a portion of fruit. Half a portion. You're meant to have 5 portions of fruit and vegetable and a similar portion in terms of vegetables. So what this shows us is that actually fruit and vegetable consumption in these children is extremely low, and this it really needs attention. Next slide, please. When we look at how much children drank in terms of water and sugar sweetened beverages, the good news is here, if you look at the table on the bottom, table 4, they're not drinking that much in terms of sugar sweetened beverages, which is good news. The not so good news is they're actually drinking less in terms of water in both on a day they attend and a day they didn't attend, which suggests that actually we have to look at initiatives to improve water consumption in children. And final slide, please. Okay, so I said I'd refer quickly to the nutritional findings. When you're looking at vision of holiday programs and clubs where you're having to source food either through surplus food and people are having to really come up with innovative menus, when you don't have enough funding to provide actually that food to the clubs directly, when you're relying on volunteers that do a sterling job at providing this food and cooking at scale, it's hardly surprising that food is one of the most difficult nuts, if you like, to crack, and forgive the pun here. In terms of what we've learned from England, we found that as soon as the government invests seriously at a local level, that these food issues go away, because the clubs and programs can afford all of the resources that are needed to provide food. This socio-ecological model of change that we've identified just provides an overview of all of the different levels at play in driving this implementation forward, and to make sure that, first of all, it's having the desired outcomes or impacts on children, parents, and society, in terms of, for example, driving human capital to enable parents to work, but also in terms of the interpersonal level. So what effect is it having on children in terms of learning loss, in terms of supporting children to become valuable citizens? And with that, I will finish my presentation. Thank you so much.
First class, Greta. With 2 minutes to spare, that's terrific. You had me scared when you started off, but no, very disciplined speaking. Thanks very much for that. And again, as I said to you, the chat function's there. If you have questions that you want to raise for Greta or for Pauline, for Ellen, stick it onto the chat there. I'm going to try and get answers to you before the end of today. As I said at the very start, children in Northern Ireland believe that to address holiday hunger in particular areas, it's about a partnership. It's a partnership working, as I said, with government, indeed my time in local government, working with local government, but also too, it has to be done through the community, and the community is a critical part of the success of holiday hunger projects. So I'm delighted now that one of the partners, Oasis Youth from Portadown, we have Andrew McCreary here to give us a community partner's perspective on addressing holiday hunger. So over to you, Andrew.
Thank you, Liam, and thank you, Greta, for the presentation. Oasis were very heavily involved in some of the feedback into the research last year, with the volunteers and children, young people, parents, etc. So it's really fantastic to see, and we can identify with so much that's going on. As Liam said, my name's Andrew McCreary, and I was previously a youth coordinator of Oasis Youth, based in Portadown and Craigavon. And we were founded in 2010 as part of Community Intercultural Programme. And one of our specific areas of work was to look at the support, integration and inclusion, quality of opportunity and personal development for families, particularly of a migrant background, who had come to work and to live in the Craigavon area. And our work has developed a little bit since that. We were working with all communities, but the work of migrant workers and the families of migrant workers is still very much at the heart and the core of what OASIS and CIP continues to do. The issue of short-term and medium-term poverty was always very high on the list of issues that families would come to CIP with. Very often that was one of the issues which we were aware of, and that's for a number of reasons. A lot of people come in via agencies. There's a high volume of people who might work in food production, which can be traditionally very low paid. There's a lot of people in precarious employment situations like short-term contracts, 0-hour contracts, are moving from place to place on short-term work. Things like reduced family support network for childcare, very often lack of knowledge of local services or access to support, and contrary to popular belief that migrants don't come here to get benefits, our experience is that the majority of people who are new or just moved to the country over a couple of years are claiming less than they're entitled to very often. And also things like high demand for accommodation costs. All of these were putting pressures on our families. So it was around 2014, 2015 that the issue of food poverty started to become very real for OASIS. We had traditionally, as I say, OASIS was established in 2010, and we had been running summer programs and holiday provision, which wasn't directly linked to food. In those early days when we were established, we were working with groups of 30, maybe up to about 90. And we had traditionally been providing food for them. So parents would pay a small fee, and we were able to attract funding to supply lunch. Around 2014, our numbers expanded very, very rapidly. And we were working in the summertime with groups up to from 300 to 500 in some years. And we took the decision in 2014 that we would no longer provide lunch. And that we would start to ask young people to bring their own lunch. And that was a very, very steep learning curve. As I say, we were aware of the issue of poverty, but we weren't fully aware of the direct implication that was having on the lives of children and young people until 2014. And we were amazed to find that in around 10% of our children were arriving at summer club without any lunch or without adequate lunch. So we over the next couple of years, we started to put measures in place to make sure that every child would have something. And we started to gently explore some of those. We were finding things like empty lunch boxes arriving at summer scheme. We were finding things like no lunch boxes coming at all. We were finding yesterday's leftovers in a lunchbox. We were finding dry bread. We were finding out-of-date food. We were finding junk food. So there was just a whole variety of stuff. And whenever we totaled it together, we reckoned that somewhere in the region of about 25% were not bringing an adequate lunch or bringing any lunch at all. And I say that took us initially by surprise, and we started to explore the reasons behind that gently with children and with parents. And the primary issue was directly linked to poverty, or indirectly linked to poverty was the reason why that children did not have an adequate lunch. There was occasions when parents said, I just didn't have anything. I just didn't have any food in the cupboard. There was issues like parents were working night shift, and perhaps an older sibling had been left to organise the child to come out to holiday clubs, who just didn't have the skill set to get lunch ready, or there's things like maybe perhaps mental health issues or illnesses in the family. And of course, as you would expect with all communities, sometimes it's just really bad decision making in the home, low skill sets, parents making bad choices as well on a small number of cases. So whatever the reason behind it was, we were faced with situations where we had children turning up without adequate provision. So we had issues of some examples of some of the families that we were coming across. We had a classroom assistant who had their children had turned up without any food, and whenever we spoke to mum, she was in one of those contracts where she only got paid for 10 months of a year, and her kids were at home in the summertime. So summer was the most expensive time of the year, she told us, for us, and more expensive than Christmas, because she had to provide the meals for family, and she had to do something in terms of holidays and providing food for them. We had a family who we had met who made contact with us in Oasis, and they had said that they were heading into the weekend with £5. Dad had just lost his job. They didn't have access to the benefits. So these real crisis situations. So Dad said to us, I have £5. I've got to make a choice to put £5 in the electric meter, or I've got to make a choice to go and buy a couple of boxes of cereal to be fed. So he said, our choice is that we will be warm and hungry, or we will be cold and have food. So those are some of the examples. More recently, we've been supporting a family of 11, believe it or not, where a teenage mum has disappeared off the scene, and there's 9 children under the age of 16 in one house, and we were able to go with some food provision, for example, and there was just a house there that had literally, I talked about bad choices, but this was a family where it wasn't bad choices. This was a family where it was just circumstances. There was no devices in the house. There was no wallpaper. There was no carpet. Mum and Dad were both working, but they were both working on a 0-hour contract on low wages, and the figures just simply did not stack up. And you can imagine, even in terms of the wonderful work that things like food banks do, when you turn up a door like that with a little vegetable carton full of food, it was barely enough to provide one meal for that family. It really was a sticking plaster approach in terms of we really just need to think about a longer term approach to families who are in poverty rather than food provision. So around 2015, we had been very much aware of some of these issues which I have spoken about, and one of our staff members had been speaking at a conference, and I think Pauline from CiNI had heard the presentation about the issues of the young people that we were working with. And so conversations started to develop. Would there be a partnership which would be possible to develop? And that in 2015, 2016 led to the birth of what has now become a PGA, or Portadown Gets Active. And Oasis have been very much the community partner in the delivery of that.
3 minutes, Andrew. Okay, 3 minutes.
Okay, Portadown Gets Active is a partnership between Oasis, CiNI, CYPSP, the PHA, and ABC Council, along with other really, really fantastic funders. As identified by Greta, it's much more than food provision. It's very much educational. All of the young people will come, they will get breakfast, they will get a break, they will get a healthy lunch, very often a warm lunch as well. They will get education, they will get exercise, they will get support around their physical and mental health. And also, very importantly, they will also get, there's a huge volunteer base who comes to support us. So the program works particularly with young people from for the ages of 4 to 11. But we also identified a need for support amongst teenagers, and getting provision for healthy lifestyle projects to teenagers is a very different ball game. So we identified very early on the need to engage with them. And one of the things that Oasis had done very successfully over the years was volunteering. So we decided to engage a large group of teenage volunteers who would come in and be peer mentors. They would learn as they delivered, and they also would be a fantastic support to the program as well. So I'm going to quickly share a video before I come back and close. And it's from Anna, who is one of our volunteers. I think she's also on the call somewhere. So I'm just going to go ahead and screen share really quickly. And you're going to hear from Anna, who has been a fantastic ambassador for the program and for volunteering. So let's hear from Anna. Thank you.
I think my favourite part about being a peer mentor is probably the giving back element to it. Oasis have provided me with so many amazing once-in-a-lifetime opportunities that I know I wouldn't have ever gotten a chance to do elsewhere. And another thing I really enjoy is the idea that I might be able to provide our children and young people with the same amazing experiences and opportunities that I got. Being a peer mentor for numerous cross-community projects has allowed me the chance to interact with a large variety of children and young people who all have very different needs and backgrounds. In particular, volunteering as a leader during our Holiday Hunger program Gets Active has really made me aware of the inequalities within our local communities that affect our children and young people, not only in our own communities, but across the whole country. As a result of my work working with children and young people affected by holiday hunger, I have become one of the Northern Ireland Food Ambassadors for the Food Foundation, which involves me speaking to politicians and policymakers about my own experiences within our local community regarding food insecurity, helping to increase public awareness around issues regarding food insecurity, and meeting with other food ambassadors across the entirety of the UK and campaigning together to change these government policies regarding these issues. My work as a peer mentor and volunteering regularly with Oasis throughout the years has recently opened up another amazing opportunity for me, which is a job offer at the centre, which is amazing for me because not only do I get to be paid to do something that I love, but I also get to witness firsthand the impact that these programs, such as the Get Active program and even our after school clubs, has on our children and young people in Oasis.
So fantastic to hear from Anna, and she's been a peer mentor right through the programme. Just as I come to a close, and sorry Liam for going slightly over my time, Greta had mentioned partnership, and sometimes when partnership's mentioned, you can either embrace it or sometimes you run from it. We've all had bad experiences of partnership and tick box and exercise, etc. But I just want to put on record that Portadown Gets Active has been a true and meaningful partnership between the partners, and I want to pay particular tribute to Darren Curtis, who I know has put a lot of work into keeping that partnership, initiating it and keeping it alive, and also to the on the ground work that goes on. I've since moved on from Oasis, and Bethany and Laura have been doing an amazing job along with the other team, especially during lockdown, perhaps when Portadown Gets Active was needed the most. And we had trouble delivering that. They adapted so well, and they're back up and running again. And I wouldn't say found ways around the legislation, but found being creative about how we can deliver this and still be educating young people, still be giving them opportunity and support, and still be doing that essential food provision. So it's been a fantastic 4 or 5 years of Portadown Gets Active, and I know the whole team at Oasis and CiNI and all the other partners are looking forward to developing that and rolling it out across Northern Ireland and embracing the changes that the department is introducing as well. So thank you so much.
Thanks very much, Andrew, and indeed thanks very much to Anna in her supporting role in your presentation. I suppose that's from the community partner perspective. The next speaker is from the business partner perspective. And again, what's very unique about the Holiday Hunger projects is the partnership between the community, children in Northern Ireland, some of the statutory bodies, and indeed business. And in particular, we're going to welcome Diego Pearson from Finnebrogue in Downpatrick, who came on board with the Downpatrick Holiday Hunger project a couple of years ago and have been instrumental in terms of supporting children in Northern Ireland, indeed, not only in Downpatrick, but also across the board. So, Diego, I ask you to speak now. Thank you.
Thanks, Liam, and good morning, everyone. I think if you're like me, you're probably a little bit Zoom weary after all these months of working from home, so I'll keep this relatively brief. I just want to start by saying a huge thanks, really, to Pauline, to Ellen, the entire team for the work they do. At Finnebrogue, we're incredibly pleased to be able to support children in Northern Ireland and help them make what is a really sizable difference to so many children's lives in our local area. We're now a pretty major private sector employer in our sort of corner of County Down, 900 people, and we take our responsibility to our community really, really seriously, both in providing the employment and the skills and the training, but also in helping to facilitate vital activities like these projects. As Liam said, this is the second year of our partnership, and we obviously get together at the end of 2020 in a pretty extraordinary, unprecedented year, a year in which a football star has obviously propelled the issue of holiday hunger onto the front pages. But I think as we've already heard, this is so much more than just about holiday hunger. And I think in the year of COVID, it's really about how we as a society provide a quality of opportunity, for everyone, how we provide the education, the social skills, the social development, the stable, safe environment for children to reach their full potential, whatever their background. So I think, as we get together, we congratulate the team for the work that they've done, the phenomenal work they've done, the young lives they've made better. But I think as we also sort of rally more support to ensure no child goes hungry, we must also think about, right, how do we provide the sustainable solutions to a crisis now that is probably, unfortunately, only going to be exacerbated by the economic times we're living in. Biggest recession in 300 years, likely to cause financial pain for a little while yet. And I think to deliver that long-term change, we need partnerships like this between the private sector, the public sector, third sector, that don't just provide the safety nets that any society needs, but also help foster the social, economic conditions, help create the stable families, encourage the stable families that have got to be the bedrock of a child's life. So look, at Finnerborough, we're really pleased to play our part. We look forward to playing our part in the future. We congratulate the charity for all they've done. I think on behalf of all of us, all our 900 staff now, wish you all a Merry Christmas, and it's going to be a Christmas I know will be all the happier for many children, thanks to this fantastic charity.
Thanks very much, Iago. That's really appreciated. And again, thanks to Finnerborough for their partnership and such willing partners to be involved in the project. So I suppose it comes to the concluding remarks now, and I'm going to pass across to Pauline Leeson, who's the Chief Executive of Children in Northern Ireland, for the concluding remarks. First of all, I suppose before I hand over, to thank particularly the speakers today for staying so well within time and not causing me to have to cut in on them at any point in time. Thanks to the Minister again for his contribution, and indeed in such a busy day for this. And again, I suppose thanks to Ellen and Pauline for asking me to chair this. It's something I've been passionate for many years. I mean, working in my full-time working life, I'm not out of working life at this, but again, thanks for their involvement. And again, thanks very much, Roger, for keeping the technology so smooth. So I hope I haven't cut into your clothes. It'll allow you to broader concluding remarks, Pauline. So over to you to close the session.
Liam, thank you so much. And then I'm just going to give a couple of thanks. I mean, as you've said, we've been doing this for the past 4 years, and it's, as Jago says, it's much more than just feeding children. I'm so grateful to Greta and Jackie for doing this evaluation, because it really captures what we were doing. And it's lovely to hear children actually understanding what we were doing and feeling very comfortable with it as well. I really have to commend the Minister who was with us this morning in terms of his decision to make direct payments to children during holidays. I mean, that has been a big policy win for us, and it's something that ourselves and other groups have been campaigning for quite a long time. I mean, the Minister was quite generous as well, because I mean, this has been a partnership between the Department of Communities, Deirdre Hargy and her staff, and I have to say both education and communities have been quite magnificent in the way that they have risen to the challenge of COVID in terms of recognising the difficulties around food insecurity and getting help out to people who are quite vulnerable and needed a lot of help during that period. I mean, for us, this is a really major step for every parent who struggles to find money for meals outside term time, every child and young person who might go hungry, and for every organisation who has stepped up and provided holiday hunger since we started raising the issue. It is a grassroots movement. I have to be really, really clear about that. I mean, most of this work is done by volunteers alongside local businesses like Almac, like Finnerborough. If they didn't come in and offer their generous help, these projects wouldn't happen. So it's very important that this has actually come from the ground up. We're supported by local people, and I think that's what really makes it so relevant and so responsive to local need. I mean, ending holiday hunger and child poverty, because we are really talking about child and poverty here, is a huge task, and I'm so proud of everyone that's risen to this this challenge. I would really like to thank the boundless energy of our community partners, Oasis, Carrick, Fergus, YMCA. We have a project in Limavady with Dry Arch Children's Centre and the Partition Youth Centre in Downpatrick have all been absolutely magnificent. Everything that we've asked them to do, they've come up with new ideas. They've really gone beyond what we've been asking them to do in terms of working with these children and their families. Of course, a big thank you, as I've said, to Almac and Finnebrogue. And also we do have some other funders, PHA, Breaks, Halifax Foundation, and of course the Health and Social Care Board have funded this evaluation. So really, at the end of the day, I want to thank you, Liam. You've been a big supporter of this in your previous role in the council and in the Young People Strategic Partnership as well. You've helped us drive this from quite a small idea into, you know, a sizable project which has got real policy outcomes. I mean, we're going to be looking at the anti-poverty strategy coming out in the new year. I've been one of the experts on the panel. So this issue of food insecurity and how we end poverty for children and their families has been something that we've been very conscious about tackling in quite a radical way. Finally, I just want to thank the children, young people and parents who've come to our programmes. I mean, they are really wonderful. Sometimes their lives are very challenging, but we go in there, they're doing their edible gardens, they're out on their trips, there's always a smile on their face. You know, they're doing a fantastic job raising children, as Jago has said, in very difficult circumstances, both now and into the future. And I really want to thank them and praise them for all their amazing efforts during COVID. We are absolutely determined to continue addressing these issues as we go forward. We are going to redouble our efforts to ensure that children don't go hungry. The voluntary sector, local business don't have the solutions. This is, as Greta has quite rightly said, an opportunity for government to invest in communities at a local level. So certainly Children in Northern Ireland, we'll be looking at how local government and obviously the executive is going to rise to this challenge. We will be there holding their hand. We do not intend to roll out all these projects ourselves across Northern Ireland, but we're quite happy with the model that we've provided and how successful it's been. So in conclusion, I just want to say thank you all for working with us in partnership. We couldn't do it on our own, and to wish you all a very happy Christmas and hopefully a brighter 2021 now that we've got the vaccine.
Just to say that access to the slides and to the presentation will be available in connection with the webinar. And again, thanks everyone for their participation and happy Christmas to everybody. Thank you.